I don't have the universal password. So, look, open discussion. I think where Georgia wants to go is, one of the discussions that we've sort of had is that, and some of this may be personal opinion, so feel free to disagree and tell me otherwise. We struggle in Canada for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons we struggle is the influence of that big beast that lies on the west coast just south of the 49th parallel. I know we're well south of the 49th parallel here, but the influence of the US and the US market, and particularly in the US, that, you know, whether the NBA dominates or the NC2A dominates, there's this eternal confusion as to what basketball is and how basketball is played, what rules are, how rules are made. And there's this influence, and so many of our officials are heavily influenced by it, and we can't seem to get a grasp on FIBA itself. And I'm willing to argue, and again, you may disagree, but the FIBA rules are dirt simple. They're very simple because they're all based on principles and protocols. So as an example, to have an over and back, you simply need team control in the front court, ball returning to the back court, first to touch in the back court. If you have all three of those things, you have an over and back. If you have one of them missing, you can't have an over and back. But everybody freaks out and says, oh, they jumped from here, or they, you know, so-and-so deflected the ball. Well, no, it's last to touch. It doesn't matter how many times it's deflected if team control hasn't changed. I mean, you know, everybody freaks out about the travel rule, and a couple years ago, the rule was changed and introduced the 0 step. Well, nothing changed. You have to have a pivot foot, and if you move the pivot foot beyond the allowances in the rule, you have a travel. If you don't have those things, you don't have a travel. And so FIBA has a complete set of protocols in terms of how to make decisions, and I don't think we have a lot of knowledge around those protocols. And it was very interesting because even in the 2 games I watched yesterday, I thought, and I didn't talk to the crew about this last night because there were more important things to talk about, but I thought the crews actually struggled with what active shooting is. And I don't know if that's something that you guys see in your games, particularly at the OUA level. I don't know if you see that struggle or not, Dave?
Not that bad. It's more, it's those sort of those, you know, 50-50s. Yeah, it's deciding, you know, whether they've started an upward motion. That's where we see most of the issues. It's not necessarily.
So to cut to the chase, the protocol is very, very simple. If you have a 50-50 play as to whether it's active shooting or not, it's active shooting. And that's what the protocol is.
Yeah, FIBA wants to make him a shooter if we have those types.
But it's 50-50.
Right.
If it's a 50-50 play and there's any doubt, it's active shooting. And what that does is it creates a much broader consistency across everything, because we're never going to come to complete agreement on those type of things. And I'll also tell you, we're in the process of rewriting the definition of gather right now. So we're in the process of rewriting the definition of gather, and probably going to end up using what is primarily the NBA language around gather, but we're in the process of writing that. So, you know, there's a protocol on just about anything. So, and if we can get people using those protocols, we move much closer. So if I jump real simply to say end of quarter or end of game, and remember, and this is just my anal retentive nature, and I am anal, but we don't have periods anymore. Everything is quarter. Yet we continue in this country to use the term period, and I don't know if that's because of hockey, but you know, we've gone away from it at the FIBA level, and we now use quarter, and we use overtime. We don't use extra time. We don't use, you know, other things.
Just like how many officials still say bonus.
Well, exactly. But it is interesting. That is starting to slip into the lexicon, but nonetheless. So, you know, end of game and end of quarter. When the horn goes, we have an immediate whistle and a stop clock. If the basket's not gonna count, it's the only time we cancel a basket that hasn't gone in. But we cancel immediately. And if the shot is going to count, if it goes in, the hand stays up, and then as soon as it goes in, give the signal. But it's critical that we have a whistle at the end of every quarter, when there's, regardless if there's a shot. But if there's a shot, it's whistle and cancel immediately at that point. And I think we all know that, but that protocol isn't used consistency across the country. And you know, certainly Nadine, you know, please jump in because you're much better at this. But we use this language about protecting the shooter, and it's not so much protecting the shooter as it is our protocol. So we use a 1-2-3 technique when refereeing a shooter. So feet, body, hands, but we finish it with 3-2-1. So we come from the hands back to the body, back to the floor. And so we should never have a whistle on an active shooting foul until the active shooting ends. So we want the player back down on the floor and the play over before we're gonna have that whistle. And of course our IOTs of referee the defense, and I would humbly suggest, and again open to arguments, that of the 10 sort of IOTs, referee the defense is probably the most important one. And when we see an error on the floor, it basically is because the officials aren't refereeing the defense, and they end up either refereeing ball or offense. I would suggest that every time we have an error on a block charge, it's because we're not refereeing the defense. Because if we referee the defense, we can apply the criteria of legal guarding position, 2 feet on the floor facing, and the abilities to adjust.
A question, you said, I agree 1,000%, referee the defense. What can you offer an official that you see, okay, play's going around, and they're just following the ball, and something happens, and we're sitting here watching, what did the defense do wrong? Nothing, but you weren't looking at the defense, you were following the ball. So what can you offer the referee who does that?
I kind of said to Mike earlier, you know, because he said, I'll stay if this is worthwhile, but I'll leave if it's no good. And I said to him, no, come back tomorrow, because it'll be much better. And tomorrow, when we talk about help defenders, secondary defenders, I think we'll see some really good plays to really cause people to understand why we need to referee the defense. But in terms of the ball, you know, cynical answers would be, well, that's what the 18,000 people in the building are doing. They're watching the ball.
So true.
The ball is probably the least important thing in the game, because everybody else will tell you what happened to it. You know, like, you know, yesterday, even in the second game, all 3 officials, when the ball went out on the baseline, they would watch it and watch it bounce out of bounds. Well, once it crosses the end line, it's not coming back on its own. Like, your eyes don't need to leave the floor. They need to stay on the 10 people. And whether it's the sound of it hitting the floor or whatever, or some guy who's, you know, the Nivea player that only gets into the game to change the complexion at the end, I mean, he's gonna tell you it's out of bounds. Like you don't need to be watching the ball go out of bounds because everybody else in the building is gonna tell you that. I mean, it's not that you don't understand what happens with the ball, but really the ball is the least important thing. And how many times you see a foul called on a ball? We have very few fouls called on the ball.
I never know in OUA.
Mike, if I may,
Yeah.
I think you brought a very good point, Mike. There's many situations where we tell them what to do and what to watch and where they should look at. But I think we need to find a way to develop drills to train them. That's a good example. Saying to a referee the defense is one thing. If you're repeating yourself over and over for a year and just still looking at the ball, looking at the offensive player, instead of getting the defender, we need to put drills in place like any players. I mean, you could tell a player dribble both sides, dribble between legs, whatever it is. You put drill in place and they practice and then they figure out and they're good at it. It's the same. I mean, for example, that I've tried to put a clip where we hide the defensive player, and we show the offensive player move only, and then we have a whistle, and then we show the defender coming on the screen to show them that no way you can make a decision if you don't have any idea where was the defender when the offensive player left the floor. And this is what will help those officials to learn what they should do if we have some drills to put in place and show them in many different situations.
So if you go a little further on that, Pierre, while our terminology is referee the defense, and we want to stick to that terminology of referee the defense, sometimes with younger officials, you can talk about teaching them to find the defense.
I like that.
Exactly.
And if you can teach them to find the defense, that actually gives them something to do.
With the goal in mind.
Yeah.
Now you know
And
defense.
once you learn to find
Then
the
you can
defense.
see where the offense is in what.
That's a very good example, because refereeing the defense, you might focus on the defense, you never know where, if you travel, whatever happened with the offensive players, you're only watching the defender. But find the defender, use difference.
And a drill that we use for
Obviously,
that,
Ray, you
especially-
didn't like the term find the defense.
Especially, you know, a drill that we use, especially in transition to help with block charge, is find the defender. You pick up that defender early, and that drill that we use,
Yeah.
running the court, picking them up early, and seeing, you know, where they come from. That's an easy drill to do.
So I love this. It's actually perfect, because that's something I've struggled with. How do you get them to watch? Well, not you, gotta watch him, right? But if you find the defense, now you're in a position of, that's my primary area. If you're finding the defense, there's the play coming in. You're my partner. You don't have to help me find my defense, because you should be watching your area. Find your, oh, God.
But it's also.
That's a simple term,
But it's
too.
also difficult to do when you're running, because you're focusing on your running, you're focusing on where you're going, and you get off the ball, but to focus on while you're doing this movement, looking over your shoulder, that's the other thing you have to teach them.
Yes.
First of all,
That's
is
everybody.
to look over the shoulder and watch the court, but it's a whole process, right? And so it's something they need to do repetitively.
But carry on with the looking over the shoulder. And it's something that we're spending a lot of time with internationally, because as we all know, with any sort of a videotape, you know, you can't take your head away and then come back. When you have to come back, you have to refocus. So we've got officials in transition that turn and look. I mean, some look at the wall that they're running towards. Some are looking to the baseline. Well, you know, realistically, no disrespect to the facility, because I think there are 3,944 lines, at least on court number 3.
They're adding one currently.
They're excellent, because they are missing the throwing
Well, you
line.
said 99.
But so they get the throwing line, we'll get close to the 4,000. But the baseline doesn't move. Like or the end line doesn't move. It's in the same spot, you know, all game long. So it's that discipline when you're in transition to have your head over your shoulder, and it's teaching them why do they have their head over the shoulder, as to find the defense, and particularly the help defender.
And it all comes back to refereeing 101, right? These are the basic fundamentals. And we often go from, you know, first year learning the basic fundamentals to then just play calling. That's all they want. That's all they want to talk about. That's all they want to do, right?
Sorry, with find the defense, and looking over the shoulder, I'm trying to figure out how you teach that. I mean, do we have, just jokingly, do we throw balls at them from behind so they're constantly looking to find out? How do we instill in them that need to constantly look over the shoulder, right? is it just,
A running drill.
just keep practicing and just keep
Just-
looking, and if they don't look, you throw a ball at them? It's just.
No, you flash numbers,
Yeah.
you.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
and it goes back, so
Yeah.
in NOCP level 1, the first on-court drill is to look over your shoulder, right? You go down the court, you make them. So what we have started doing on numerous classes that we've done is, like Nadine just said, we're flashing numbers. So they're running down the floor. First time they run down the floor, I'll be walking down the floor like this, and it's like, so what number did I have? And they go, what number? What do you mean number? And then after that, it starts to click in, it's like, oh, we're not doing the drill properly, and you can watch them. So it's just on the floor, and it's like, it's the first part of it, it's like 15 minutes long. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it until they just like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
It's really interesting, because if we can start to do these things, people will start to have success. As we know, once you start to have
Success brings
success,
more
you'll
success,
repeat
desire for
what you're
success,
doing.
And that's why we repeat that in every NOCP level on court training.
And, yeah, we do it.
It doesn't matter if we're, in 1 or 3.
Yeah.
We're doing the same, because it's about basic fundamentals. That's what this is. And if you have that core base, then you can add on top of that.
And people forget about that too, and it's a crawl, walk, run. So when you do that drill, it's let's walk through it first, and then we'll instill in you what the objective is of how we're doing this. So we're walking, this is what we're doing, we're looking over our shoulder, we might have a couple of players out there walking next to them, and we show them how to do it. We make them walk through it.
So Eric didn't say this, but I'm going to suggest that Eric said this.
Okay, that's
The biggest-
you saw the cloud above my head.
Well, yeah, the biggest problem we have in refereeing is we don't practice.
I know.
Yeah.
We don't practice.
We don't know.
And we have to set up environments where we practice. Because I don't know if, in British Columbia, I think the ratio is now 1 practice to 1 game, but in most of the world, it's, 3 or 4 practices to a game. And we need to be doing the same thing. And this is where we lack. So good thought, Eric.
Thank you.
The one thing that it's interesting, because what you said was critical, is that when we're training our officials, so the operation that you're in is that you are in the top of the world, right? So when you bring your referees in, you still are doing those fundamental training. And this is where our referees, I don't think, are understanding that at all.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's what game you have, what matchup you have, did I get the play right? Right? And then when you get back in the room with them, and you're talking to them about positioning, about, hey, are you, finding the defense and all this stuff, they're kind of looking at you like, did you see the big block charge I had? Didn't I rock that punch out, right? And then it's different. So what I'm wondering is that, we have so many different basketball dimensions in the rooms and layers, is that how do we bring consistency for our officials to make sure that they do practice these things? Like camps, camps sometimes go one of 2 ways, right? They're fundamentally based or they're game based, right? To get of doing it. So how do we work on that? Because you're absolutely right. Like when we take it back to basics, people are looking at you like, well, what was the point of that post game? Why is she telling me to look over the shoulder and find the defense? Why am I not getting told how many balls and strikes?
Yeah, so I think a real focus on the IoTs. I think a real focus on the IoTs because they become critical. I mean, like every September, and I said to Dave this morning that I'm one of 7 people left in Canada that buys a newspaper every day. I mean, I don't know exactly the other 600, but
You got
Man,
they're all in this room.
well, there you go.
My
But
follow-up question.
every September,
Are you guys, is part of the record board yet? Oh, okay. Sorry.
oh, you're welcome.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you. Every September, there's stories about NHL players that spent their summer in skating school.
Yeah.
And I think it's just as simple as that. And then we got NBA players all have shooting coaches. Everything comes down to it. But I mean, we started with protect the shooter. So So we moved to referee the defense. The other piece with protect a shooter is the IoT stay with the play. And it's absolutely critical that we let the play finish before we move on from it. And I don't know that we're seeing a lot in Canada, but I'm starting to see it a little bit at the youth sports level, where we have shooters that are spreading legs, seeking contact.
Oh, we have.
And we're starting to see that a little bit more.
Throwing the leg forward.
Well, whether it's forward or sideways,
Yeah.
there's somebody closing out that is going sideways. When that leg comes out, we suddenly have contact. And if we're not staying with the play, we're never going to be able to pick that up. So that becomes critical. I just want to go back and make sure everybody understands what we talk about with the jump shooter: 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Take them back down to the floor. If that makes sense.
Mike, can I suggest something for us as observers? When we talk about how to run the floor, maybe if we could get a clip of each official, just that's how we start, just each official going to lead, right? And if we consistently reinforce that, how they run, because you're right, I would say probably 80% of our officials look at the wall because it's uncomfortable to run, because they've run all their life with their head forward, right? So maybe if we as observers could just, 10 second, hopefully 4-second clip of them going to.
I hope it's not 10 seconds, because then we have another conversation.
Yeah, I hope a 4-second clip of each.
But do we have officials understanding why we talk about a 4-second transition from trail to lead?
Yes.
Or are they only hearing, I have to run faster?
Right.
I mean, the 4-second transition is about being, on the baseline, turned, ready to accept the play. And so that's what the focus is. It's not the 4 seconds. It's were you in position?
I had it on Thursday where Faye was fast enough to get down, turn, accept the play, fix your pants, and call us out.
That was the best clip I've seen.
Yeah, she was that quick. But accepting the play is the important part, right?
Yeah, but I think one thing, you could talk to them about this. If they don't have, you need to catch their attention when we're talking about something. So one of the good example is when you have a situation in a clip and you're showing them. Sometimes we spend more time talking about the validation of the call instead of looking what happened before and why is it at the end result that we missed that call. And that's a good example. If you have a situation where you missed a call because he was not looking over shoulder, just running down the court and face the wall, then you say, here's the situation, here we have the end result here, the validation of the call, but why did that happen? And then you go back to what happened before, and this is why you need to run over a shoulder and see the court when you're going down the court. Yeah. And you need to get their attention why I'm doing this, because just telling, when you run down the court and look over your shoulder, 95% of the time nothing will happen. But the 10% of the time you need to be there, you can't miss it. So you need to catch their attention. Why is it that we're doing this? Here's the situation. We missed that call because what happened?
I'm gonna add something to that though too, is that when we're talking to referees and talking basics 101, I think the focus should be on developing good habits.
Mm-hmm.
And so why we're looking over our shoulder, because we wanna have that habit 100% of the time. It's just natural. So everything we do, it's about developing good habits. And that's why we have these protocols and procedures, because it's when you're the heat of the action and the game is going, the fans are, and it's game's going south, you have something to always rely on.
And there's sort of three, it's kind of three theories, right? There's the 10,000 hours theory, that you have to do something for 10,000 hours
Debunked.
before you become an expert.
You have
There's the theory that you have to do something 66 days in a row before it becomes a habit and it's locked in. But that's a London School of Economics.
Oh, okay.
I have a 21 days theory.
But London,
I subscribe to the 21 days.
Not the British, not the British.
London School of Economics says you have to do something 66 days in a row before it becomes a habit. But it's really about muscle memory, right? It's all about muscle memory. And we do spend too much time talking about officials about right or wrong, as opposed to how could we have made a better decision.
Yes.
and what we need to do. Better
So that's why they get all fixated on just, did I get the ruling right? Did I do it right? So I've gone to the cause and effect. So here's the cause, and this is what the effect is. So if you kind of use that in context of when I'm explaining things, you can say, the effect is you're out of position. The cause is, yes, you're misseeing things. You can't get an open angle if you're not in the right position. So those are the cause and effect. So
Just,
Yeah, so I don't want to interrupt, but, I'm curious as to how comfortable our officials are with not being, because most officials are anal and prefer to be right and wrong,
Yeah.
right? Rather than in a learning environment where it's a bit too gray sometimes for them. And I wonder how we can get our officials to accept developing habits rather than being right and wrong all the time.
I think it's a good question, but I think at the end of the day, the officials that are successful at any level really are the officials that can referee in the gray. Because, you know, effectively the black and white, you should be able to teach to anyone. And it's that discussion of, is this an art or is this a science? And if it's like we've gone away from what I'll call flamboyance. We've gone away from having individual criteria to we all have the same criteria, but we all still have to have the ability to apply the art to refereeing. And I think that's the difference is trying to convince people that it's more than a black and white situation. I don't know if that helps at all. Anybody else got any thoughts?
Well, I think us as observers, we need to take our focus off when we do clips of the validation of the call. That should be the last. So when we go through clips, I think, like I go through positioning, and I go through primary, is it in your primary, secondary? Do we have an open and closed look? We look at what the infraction was, and then the last thing is the validation of the call. But a lot of times, we have as observers get to our clips, block charge got it wrong. So I think we need to go through that checklist, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we need to, when we're reviewing clips, like you said, like how, why you got it wrong.
But I will agree with you, but at the beginning of the discussion, you need to show them what is the end result of that play. So when
and
we
then
talk
go
about
backwards.
what happened before,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
catch their attention, why we missed it.
Yeah.
Because you just go, okay, here's the situation, bang, 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 and they don't know why you're talking about this, like,
Yeah,
what's the
okay.
point?
Yeah, that's-
So what's the end result? Okay, let's go back and see why we get there.
And look at our positioning, whether it's in our primary, secondary, whether it's in, but I think we just go to call validation
Absolutely.
all the time.
And to your point, Mike, I think you touched a very, very important point. We never practice.
No.
We referee. The only practice that we could have is clips. And in the past was, the point was about how can I get clips on my game? How can I have somebody taping me and can I, now it's not the point everybody could have. And did that, next time you go to the clinic, ask people in the audience, how many times you've seen yourself referee last season? And most of them will say 2-4 times, when they could have every game clips. There's a small device called iPhone. Ask anybody. Give him $5 to your little brother or whatever, and ask him to tape you half of a game, and you'll see yourself. And then if you watch yourself with all protocol in place and everything, then that's a kind of practice you could put in place so people can see what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. Because we're going back to drills and practice. I mean, when a player, you have drills, you do drills in practice, you never do drills during the game.
But you could do drills during your high school games.
Yeah. So,
Come in with one intention.
I do shot clock drills
That's right.
in the high school games.
I don't want to use this to make the argument that we use clips too often, but I actually do think we use them too often.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, it's not important, but you know, last night I just talked to the crew because I wasn't taping anything. And sometimes, so if I go to one of the other pieces of protocol, which is really around shot clock, and realistically, we have a very clear protocol of shot clock, so that every time you have a new possession, we we need to pick up the shot clock and the game clock. Now, I'm not sure that I love the protocol, but the protocol is to pick up the last 2 digits on the game clock. So if you know the last 2 digits on the game clock, you can always do the math to figure out where the shot clock belongs. But we need to pick up the game clock, but we also need to pick up the shot clock on every new possession to ensure that it runs correctly. Step a little outside the protocol, but if there's a new possession in the backcourt and a team is advancing the ball to the front court and the shot clock is not reset properly or running, we wait until they're in the front court before we stop the game. Okay? If we stop the game in the backcourt, we have the unintended consequence of perhaps creating 1 or 2 seconds to move the ball to the front court. Now, it is awkward if the team gets positioned right at center and they've got to stay in the front court, so let them get a couple steps into the front court, but stop it at that point. And so if we do that constantly, again, we have consistency as opposed to people just stopping them when they recognize the name. So we let them get into the front court. But on a shot clock violation, same thing, we have a protocol. If it's a 50-50 and we don't know if the ball's in the hands or out of the hand, it's in the hand. So if we don't know, it's 50-50 and the horn goes, the ball's in the hand. And we consistently referee that way. And it's amazing how effective that protocol is and creates really interesting consistency and actually eliminates an awful lot of arguments.
Can I stop you for 1 second? If you sent out an email right now to our officials in Ontario and said that protocol with 50-50 ball in hand, it's a violation kind of thing,
Yeah.
guaranteed we would not know that.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the kind of things, like from an education perspective on Thursdays, that like from protocol, like we, you know.
What do you mean, why is that?
I think that it's kind of like on a 50-50 in the act of shooting, we benefit the defense, right? We have a tendency of putting it on the ground instead of putting it on shooting, right? Going to the line. I think that we assume that it's out of the hand. So we actually benefit the person shooting the ball. I think our mentality switched. Because I've had this conversation and, you know, with numerous officials and they're like, well, no, you don't know if it was in the hand. I'm like, it's that close, it's 50-50, it's ball in hand, it's a violation.
So why are you asking this question?
Because, right? Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I was, because I asked Pierre, I'm like, how do you teach that to your officials? Because we do have the game right now is either in the first 7 seconds or in the last 7 seconds. The middle part is rotations. So from a refereeing perspective, that initial phase of offensive transition is critical, but the last 7 seconds. So a lot of times, if you're taking a look at our rotations, we're not getting into positions to judge that 50-50 when the shot clock sounds. So that's something that from a learning perspective, putting ourselves in a position in order to do that. Like you take a look at a lot of those games yesterday, right? A lot of operate in the last 7 seconds.
Sure.
So that's what I'm getting at, like in terms of
It's easiest to get a good shot in the first 7 seconds of the possession than it is after that.
Yeah.
And then if that's why there's nothing in the middle and everything comes down to the end because you're spending that time working for a good shot.
That's where, like, you know, from an officiating perspective, our officials need to understand that right now the first 3 seconds, 4 seconds, I've got to get down the court so I can accept the play, and then what pours in after, because you had spoken yesterday about the C, right? Do you want to talk to that a little bit, like in terms of that picking up the next layer of defense? Because right now our C is just hanging back. They're not filtering down the floor in terms of picking up that 7 seconds.
Yeah.
That was Thursday. We did the discussion on Thursday.
We did that. I had clips, everybody's in the backcourt watching one defender, one defender in the ball.
So can I address the last 7 seconds as well? I mean, that's I'm still officiating, so for me, it's as crew chief, that's my comment in the pregame is last 7 seconds. We're probably not rotating at all. We are looking for the shot to come up. We are looking for matchups, right? I think our crew chiefs should be on top of that as well.
But our administrators and game owners can help us dramatically here. And I'm okay in this 3 gym scenario, but at the OUA level or the OCAA level, we need LED lights on every backboard. And it's unbelievable to me that we go and play national championships in gyms that do not have the proper equipment. And the LED lights are way easier for the referee to get it right than worrying about the horn. And you know, we still have, we have 2 types of shot clocks, right? Everybody understands that we have shot clocks that as soon as you turn them on, they automatically go to 23, which is the new operation. So that's actually 23.9. So to have a backcourt 8-second count, we need to be at 15, because when we see 15, it's 15.9. But we have other shot clocks that when you turn them on at 24, it takes 1 second to go to 23. And in those cases, we need to be at 16. And how many of our officials actually have a clue what type of shot clock they're working with when they go out on the floor?
Yeah,
So it's not a protocol because we should all be on the new shot clocks. But at the local
Well, I got
level,
lots to talk about.
Carlton know how to use things.
what's that?
Good luck talking to Lester.
Well,
With update.
No, we have the same problem in Canada West. I mean, all over the place. Like you know, TRU Thompson Rivers plays in a big field house, and it's a ginormous field house where everything echoes, and you can't hear the shot clock horn for the life of you. And I can guarantee you, 3 times a year, the game's going to come down to a play at the buzzer at the end of the game, and nobody truly knows whether it was a shot clock violation or not because you can't hear it. There's no LED lights.
So
And-
what do you say we should do about it?
What's that?
What do you say that we should do about it?
Well, but these are the things where Canada basketball needs to take leadership, as well as youth sports, CCAA, everybody has to take leadership. And at least at national championships, we should have proper equipment. I mean, we need shot clocks that have tenths of a second in the last 5 seconds of the shot clock.
Which is good, because again, it moves around, so every, eventually, after 10 years, everybody will get LED
Well,
lights.
if it's a requirement, Georgia was there. I don't remember what year it was, like 2017 or 18 when the women's championship was in Victoria. And the University of Victoria builds a $77 million facility. That is beautiful, but it's a piece of shit. Like it's a piece of shit. And I truly believe, and I've told him personally, the athletic director at the time should have been hung and eliminated from the world. He's still around.
How do you feel about that?
What's that?
Tell us how you really feel, Mike.
Carl, what do you know?
Tell us how you really feel.
We'll never have work for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But I can show you a couple of pictures if you want, but they built this facility. There's 2 3-point lines on the floor, but they're not concentric.
Oh,
So clearly, they're not right, because they're not concentric.
And where did they get the plans for those lines?
Well, who knows? It is because the 2 lines where they come parallel to the sidelines out
And then-
come to a different point before they start the curve, right? So they're not concentric. So neither line is right.
Oh my God.
They have a fancy
Yeah.
logo in the middle of the court. So when we first got there, there was no circle.
No,
So we had to get them to put a circle in.
and they were outraged. They were like, what? We're like.
The University of Regina's hired the same logo people this year, and there's no circle, and they're going, no, we can't ruin the logo.
It might be ahead of her time. We'll come all over the place.
But anyways, it just, but in that
10 years down the
facility,
line.
they put in a clock, and it was a big scoreboard at that end. And I'd worked the first game in the facility, which was Carleton, Victoria. Everybody thought, let's bring the 2 schools together that have won the most national championships and have this big game. It was the year that Dave Smart was off and Robbie took over as the head coach. So we go out to the game, and the guy who was like the 3rd assistant is now elevated to the 2nd assistant, so he seems to think he's got some importance. And we go in the game, and he's screaming and yelling like 4 minutes before the game. I'm looking at Robbie going, what's he talking about? Robbie goes, I don't know, I hope you were gonna tell me. He's been doing this for an hour and I have no goddamn idea what's going on. So anyways, we're playing along. So we get down to at the end of the first quarter, Victoria's on offense, going in the direction of the clock, and we're down to about 3.5 seconds left in the quarter, and all of a sudden the horn goes to end the quarter. I was going, well, what happened here? So I went over to the score table and I said, there was 3.5 seconds up there, like how'd the horn go? She goes, no. She shows me the little box she's got there, and it shows 0. It was a Bluetooth setup, and it wasn't synced.
No synchronization.
So the horn
Club teams have those.
went when it was here, and we learned during the season that what they had to do is reset the clock on every dead ball in the last couple minutes to get it as close as possible to try and reduce that
The gap.
there. But that was the gym that they played the Women's National Championships in. I mean, it was insane. It was insane. And I made them put a clock in at the other end. Well, this big expensive scoreboard that cost them about $3 million broke down by the end of the first season. It still is not fixed to this day, 7 years later.
Wow.
And the only thing they've got in that gym at Vic is the little clock at the other end. You know, the one you can't see.
How many fouls?
The swim timer.
But, you know, not important, but this is where I say we have to rely on our administrators of the game to understand that these things make a difference in the game.
The one thing is that in terms of the shot clock piece, like, and in terms of the protocols for the 50-50 for active shooting and shot clock protocol, it's critical that even though we don't have people, the thing is that we don't have the affordability of putting people in a gym all the time to observe games. So from a consistency perspective, the responsibility has to go on our officials, and building that in is an issue. But like you said, most of them just want to get to the games, right? So that's something that, you know, as leaders, that's one of the things that we have to demand out of our particularly senior officials that have been around the game for a long time. Because if not, then as we get the youth coming up, and I mean youth, depending youth in basketball, not youth as in age, we will never change this, right? Because I know that a lot of times, you know, referees struggle because, you know, one gentleman said to me yesterday, you know, this positioning thing, like, I was told completely something different, and I was blown away yesterday in terms of the feedback and all of this stuff. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, because we're doing it our own way, right? Like, what's your philosophy? Right?
But you touch a very good point. I mean, we talk about the official being important to follow protocol and apply the criteria when they make the call and everything. And we have to transfer that focus also on the supervisor. When you talk to referee, use basketball terminology, use criteria to explain the call, use a protocol to explain why we missed it, and focus really on this protocol and criteria. This is what we're talking about. If we do that, we'll avoid having people with their personal approach and personal way to look at things. And if you have 10 different supervisors having their personal approach, then that referee will be totally confused at the end of the day. So if we're all talking about the same protocol and criteria, all that stuff like Mike presented, it's exactly what we're going to achieve.
But Pierre, this is Canada. We're all free to
Yeah,
make our
but
own
we could
decisions.
stay where we are, we're trying to get better, so.
But I say that cynically, because,
Right.
because it is a real challenge that we have, right? So if we talk about an out of bounds, how many different crew chiefs or games have you worked over the years that somebody has a different way of handling an out of bounds decision?
Yeah.
So we have a protocol. So if we have every out of bounds has verbal support. Not everyone except 3, not everyone except 5. Everyone has verbal support that is clear and heard, and it's one word.
Yep.
And the one word is the color of the team that's getting the ball. And so it's not a green ball, because I think it's orange. We can argue exactly what color the ball is, but it's not a green ball, and it's not a red ball, and it's not a white ball. It's just white
Same way.
or green. Yeah, this way is always the visiting team, that way is the home team.
Did you say same way?
this is
Yeah.
more.
But so,
Heard that? I
so,
heard that.
so
What's that, same way?
we always,
Oh, yeah.
we always have that
Stay
verbal
here.
support. But if we have a situation where we don't have a decision, we're still always gonna stop the clock. It seems ridiculous, but we need to drive that every whistle has a stop clock signal. We don't go directly to an offensive foul. We don't simply point out of bounds. We stop the clock. We all recognize that this is a stop clock signal, right? But we stop the clock. If we don't have a call, the protocol is we look to the nearest official. If that official has a call, they give the call.
One word.
Yeah. They give the call. If they don't have a call, look to the next official. If they don't have a call, we're immediately at jump.
Now, I'll say the helping official, do they have a whistle?
What's that? No, the ball's dead.
Okay.
So last night I talked to the crew and I said, look, I didn't count, guys, but I think we must have had well over 100 whistles when the ball was already dead, without using our voices.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, you can't make a dead ball deader.
Oh, we try.
I wanna make sure.
Oh, we try.
So,
Mike,
so
we try.
I am okay with capital punishment for athletic directors, but not
Then
for,
Kyle.
but not, no,
I might not have a job.
Cal's an administrator, I'm okay with administrators, not a problem at all. But, you know, we can't make a dead ball dead. So we don't need a whistle. This is
Okay.
where we need to encourage our voice. And it's striking to me, this is a bigger picture question, but it's striking to me why we've become silent referees.
Yeah.
Like-
it's
like-
I know,
amazing.
you're right about that.
What is the
100%.
attraction of being
The
mute?
South, you
Yeah.
started off this by talking about in the United States, right?
Sure.
Like
And-
they
and-
add whistles to add whistles.
And so
It's already.
the NBA have 30 teams? They have 30 teams, right?
30
The NBA?
teams.
32.
30 teams. And do you know how many different arenas they play in during the year?
That'd be 30.
30. I mean, you know, they have a couple extra games they have other places, but they can have the same setup in every arena no matter what. And this is why their instant replay system works and everything works. And they're in the entertainment business, they're not in the sport business.
Yeah.
But we're still in the sport business. And we need to get our players and coaches to understand that that the referees are human. They're not just some person in a bad, awful polyester uniform. And we can't possibly do that if we're not using our voices.
Thanks, Mike.
No, you're right about
The
that.
outfit.
Outfit.
If we're not using our voices and relating with people, we have way more success talking to people than we ever do blowing a whistle and pointing at them or something else. So yeah, so no whistle, just look, green, if that's what they have.
Mike, could you go through so I've got a call, but you disagree. So I've said red and you think it's blue. Can you go through that protocol?
So, yes, but without trying to be cynical and nasty, no, because we don't think.
We know.
Sorry.
We
Yeah.
know, right? So we're only going to do that if we know. So if it's a matter that I've got a decision and I've gone white, and you know that is wrong, you bring the information, but it's not bringing information to say what happened. It's bringing information to say, you need to change that, it's red ball.
Would we have, so you've called it white, we're in the 3-person game, I'm at trail and I know exactly it should be blue.
Yeah.
Would I blow my whistle, go psh, just to make sure that you don't put the ball into play or?
Ball's dead. I'm not putting the ball into play until I check with both my partners before I go. And if we're doing that every time, we take that risk away. As soon as you take a step towards me, I know I'm changing the call. Because you're not coming if you're not 100% sure.
Can you repeat that language you used? So you're not coming to have a conversation, you're coming to say it's green ball. That's critical, cause you talked about that post game, right?
Yeah,
If
there's
somebody's
just
coming
three.
to you, they're coming for a purpose, not to have a discussion.
And we'll get there with unsportsmanlike fouls in a minute, right?
Yeah, again, but when you make a decision to go over and give information, you're not giving information. You're going in because you have a 3,000% sure of the decision. It's a strike, and you're going to ask him to change the ball. And what happened yesterday, for example, he went over, I guess that I had something different. If you're only guessing, stay where you are, don't do anything, that's live with the play. So if you're coming in, it's because you need to change it, and the opposite is also true. If you're not sure, then you can ask for support.
Yeah,
Which is
so you're not going in unless you're 100% sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And as soon as you take that step, that tells you we're gonna change it. It's really interesting in life. If you ask somebody for help, people will give it to you. Like, if you're wandering through an airport and you say, do you know where gate 23 is? Well, seldom you will find a human being that says to you no. They either tell you where gate 23 is, or they suddenly start helping you figure out where gate 23 is. And so in those situations where we ask for help, so I don't have a call and I look to you for help, if you know what it is, you just give it to me and we move on. But it's an important distinction, because it also lets us get to, if we need to have a jump ball, we can get there quickly, right? We don't have to come together and have to have a discussion and go, well, based on the balance of probabilities and the quickness of that point guard, I think he got to the ball to touch it. It's nothing to do with it. It's just, we move on. So if we're good with that sort of becomes critical on our out of bounds.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Just based on then what we've already said, so you've brought definitive knowledge to me. I'm gonna be the administrating official. I'm used to using my voice, and so I've said red, and now I'm red.
Yep.
And then we carry on. There's no need for more whistles. The ball's already dead. We don't need to kill it again. Just one.
Exactly.
Perfect.
I don't have a problem if you want to raise your hand
Yep.
before then going blue. And the only reason for that is to bring a little bit of attention
Yep.
to you that you're going to make the decision. But if we're using our voice all the time, this just becomes common and easy.
There's one thing to help the coach stay in the chair, is when you come to me and I'm going, okay, we're probably, in my head, we're probably gonna go the other way here. You come in and says, I have blue touching the ball, and I'm sure. Great. I nod. Now the coach doesn't get up because you came in, yep, thanks, and I turn around and go the other way with my voice. But that one nod, coach, well, what, he's talking you into it. Nope, you're agreeing. So that one, I offer that, and it's kept a whole bunch of coaches sitting down, or, on the sidelines.
It's probably more effective to use your voice to communicate that across the floor as opposed to coming in, because if anyone's hearing it, definitive.
So it's one step to get the attention,
Yep,
and then say it, because there's no secrets. Right?
transparency.
When officials come together on the floor, it looks like a negotiation.
Yeah.
It looks like a negotiation.
Yeah.
And
That was a good example last night.
yeah, and we just don't know that. Everybody understand we have a throw-in protocol? So we have a throw-in protocol, which is we have the player at the spot. We indicate that they're stationary on the spot, whatever it is. We take a couple steps back and we bounce past the ball, but we always have our hand up to chop in. We know our warning whistles now. Front court, end line throw in by the offense. We have a warning whistle. We have a warning whistle before we start a quarter. We have a warning whistle at the end of a timeout. What's our other warning? We have one more warning whistle, don't we? Maybe I just-
Timeout, end line, throw in.
Start the quarter.
Oh, at the beginning of the game.
Well,
Beginning.
Before the toss.
Beginning.
Toss,
Beginning.
Before the toss.
Yeah, so we have our warning whistles and our throw-in protocol. And if we do every throw-in the same for 35 games a season, like, the players get really good at understanding how to get the ball from you and where to come to. And it makes a difference. Real big thing in Canada, you know, the rule says that the throw-in will occur at the nearest point. It actually means nearest. It doesn't mean approximately in the general zone of, because we create so many advantages and disadvantages for teams by putting the ball into play in some random location. And even off of the end line, we're not going to put the ball in play where we as officials are comfortable. We're gonna put the ball in play where it should be put into it.
Just stay there, Al.
Right.
Especially when we're going in the other direction, on the baseline, the ball goes out of bounds on the left side of the court.
Yes.
The
Oh,
official
yeah.
is right there. No move, guys.
Yeah. But we're okay passing it across.
Right,
yeah.
The issue is we're not dragging the player all the way over to where we are to do that.
So like.
Along with the,
Yeah.
Can we
I was
go?
gonna say,
Go
along with the
ahead.
warning whistle.
I've seen a lot, oh, sorry, Steve.
No, okay.
I've seen a lot of end-line throw-ins, offensive team. I've seen, like we said, they get really good at if we do it consistently all the time. So I've seen hand, I've seen bounce, right? And like,
So everybody knows the NC2A men and now the women have gone to four front court throw-in spots, right?
yeah,
Do you know why they did it?
consistency,
Yeah, because the officials were completely incapable
right?
Going to the nearest
Going
spot.
to-
having to throw into the right spots. So they had to do it to correct a big problem.
Saturday Night Live conversation.
And we should be.
So, and we've had some discussions a little bit with it around FIBA, because it is interesting. It actually worked for the NC2A to get the shot clock set properly.
Mm.
But different story.
I just add something to the warning whistle beginning of quarter. There's also a verbalization of color of possession, so team possession. So you got your warning whistle, blue ball, right? Whatever. So they want that verbalization too.
Sorry not to be overly anal, but, warning whistle first, then color, or can you say color, then the whistle?
I don't think that.
That's overly, you're right.
That's a little bit.
And here where is the problem starts.
Yeah, it's nanoseconds. Right?
Where it gets your attention, whistle gets your attention, then.
Yeah, then tell them.
So when we have double whistles,
Can we go back to throwing in the last 2 minutes?
Well, sure. Can we go back to the question? I think Dave, are we bouncing? Are we handing? Are we, because again, we get,
we're bouncing more than we're doing anything.
okay, and that's what I wanna make sure, because like Dave, I've seen a lot of variations of what happens.
So the one variable is a front court end line throw-in. If because of where the defense is, we're better to hand the ball, we can hand the
Right,
ball.
okay.
But we don't have any requirement to be handing the ball. We could bounce it if it's necessary.
Okay.
I mean, I look, I'm old, and so I would say that I would struggle refereeing to be bouncing on a front court throw-in, but it's.
You had a couple at the World Championships, but the defense was not tight, right? So, like your officials, that quarterfinal game, Serbia, Canada, right? Like there was one official bounced it.
Serbia, Canada was a semi.
Yeah. I think that in terms of using their discretion, it's interesting because if they read the defense, then it's easy to bounce. But if they're tight and trying to jam, then they're handing it off, right? In terms of it, so that's actually an interesting discussion. From a basketball IQ perspective, I think that if the referee recognizes that, which your officials did, then it's easier to bounce, right?
Yeah. Sure. Just double whistle, won't spend a
This
lot
last
of.
2 minutes, Mike, the consistency, the warnings.
The last 2 minutes?
Yeah, the warning signal.
So we have our signal and we use it on every throw-in in the last 2 minutes.
No matter where the defense is, if the.
Correct.
Okay, just wanna make sure because.
Including after every basket.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I thought we heard one time you can get away from that because there's no defender near the ball being thrown in.
Yeah,
So what are you actually
so
warning?
well, the problem is if you don't use it, and somebody then comes and defends, then you can't
Fair enough.
deal
No,
with it.
that's, I just want, thanks.
Or someone comes to defend, then,
Yeah.
then use it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, if somebody doesn't come, if you don't use it, and somebody then jumps in to defend and crosses that line,
Now we're at a warning,
now we're going to a warning and
As
not the
opposed to a
immediate
technical foul.
Right, okay.
and realistically, I mean, how many technical fouls do we have in that situation? We have very few, right? They just don't occur. But it's preventative. It's to take away. And it was all about Argentina.
Always is.
It was always about Argentina, because Argentina, coming out of the timeout in the last 2 minutes, their defender would just simply walk out of bounds and into the inbounder. So they had to look at what they were gonna do and change the defense.
Wow. That is brilliant.
So Carl changed that.
What's that?
That's world.
They changed the protocol?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of the women's, he was telling us, if
Not
there's
to do
nobody
it.
there,
Okay.
what are you doing? What are you doing? I was like, okay, whatever. We need to be
So
consistent.
they changed it for what?
So we changed.
They changed it for what?
So let's make a decision. So we're not gonna do it if we don't have the
Oh,
defender here?
Doesn't matter to me. I'd wanna know what he's telling you now.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I haven't had a
Yeah.
discussion about it.
Okay.
There wasn't any discussion at the men's at all.
So we have
I'd
a
say in
sign.
October, that was
Yeah.
a discussion that he had, was
We still
if
have a
there's no
sign and
defender,
we throw in.
if there's no
But
defender.
I think at least to get to a stage where we have everybody doing it all the time,
Mhm.
we should do it all the time.
Okay.
And then if we wanna back off,
Fair enough.
then we can back off.
Yeah.
I think we're better to do that. And just quickly on unsportsmanlike fouls, I'm kind of, laughing a little bit because, we've had 1,000%, we've had 3,000%. I mean, I don't know if this is why inflation got to where it was.
Especially in Ontario.
Our math skills have become interesting. So with the unsportsmanlike foul in terms of a protocol, we can look at clips, we can discuss tomorrow if we want to talk about specific unsportsmanlike fouls. But the really big thing right now is moving to a place of being 1,000% sure. So if you watched any of the European championships, they had a plethora of unsportsmanlike fouls, and they were just occurring completely randomly because people have misunderstood the difference between a tactical or strategic foul and a foul that meets the criteria of an unsportsmanlike foul. So we need to be 100% certain, and we want to cause the referees to absolutely be able to identify the criteria that they're using and in rule language. So if we have an unsportsmanlike foul, we ask the referees, what was the criteria? C1, 2, 3, or 4. We want that answer. And if it's C1, what did you have? And it's not a legitimate attempt to play the ball. It's not any other language, but not a legitimate attempt to play the ball.
Not basketball.
No, the spirit of the
Basketball
game.
move.
Stay away from all of the jargon and everything else and focus on that. With our C2, we're really looking for both excessive and hard. And we have a lot of plays that can have hard contact, but hard contact does not rise to an unsportsmanlike foul. It needs the elements of both hard and excessive. So how does hard contact become excessive? We look for things like follow through. So if I'm coming down and I'm gonna chop, if I merely make contact, I'm struggling with the word purposeful, but if I make contact for the purpose of stopping the clock and I come off, but I've made a play on the ball, we're fine. But if I come and follow through and drag through, that's where the hard contact can become excessive. Or I'm closing out on a shooter, I may close out and cause contact that's hard, but it becomes excessive if I don't stop on that contact, and I run through and drive the player to the floor. So we're looking for that element of hard and excessive. And it's not necessarily an easy thing at a lower level and a young official, but really, do we have C2s at a U12 game? We really shouldn't. We got a big problem if we do. At a higher level, it's just hard and excessive. The C3, which is unnecessary contact to stop the transition, it's the one that got blown up in the world and people were using and having all the time. And we need to be able to pull back because the players have generally learned that they need to make a play on the ball. And they're getting much better at playing the ball. I was sent a clip of some game in Quebec. It was Max and somebody else. And there's a turnover, the defensive player from behind actually dives and does a great job of getting a hand to the ball before there's any other contact. And so there's nothing there. The C3 was about lazy. Originally was about lazy. So the player that does not want to run back and play defense, ball turns over, they merely want to stick a hand out and throw it into the chest. So this is where we talk about unnecessary contact, is that there's no legitimate attempt to play defense. So we're looking for active feet. If we have active feet, we're probably fine. If we have a player that makes a play at the ball, and it's not to the ball, because if the dribbler crosses over, that defensive player may be making a play to this hand, but because that's where the ball was,
They get fooled.
but the offense has moved it. So if the contact's here, that's not a C3. C3 contact might be here, or a player chasing that merely runs a player, like runs into their shoulder and takes them out. So we need to be careful there that we haven't gone too far. And then we know our C4, which.
But just a second, going back to C3, will you say that the way we're applying C3 now is different than what it was a couple of years ago? Like there's less C3 now.
Yep.
Compared to
Yep.
what it was before.
Because the players have learned
Have adjusted.
and have adjusted, but the referees haven't. The referees are just reacting to what happens.
So the challenge now is to bring everybody on the same page. That play you're talking about, I just run that little survey. I send the clip to 20 different U Sport officials.
Yep.
And ask them within the next 15 minutes to throw me their answer without contacting each other to figure out if we were the same.
Yeah, 4 of them sent it to me, Pierre.
And he came out.
So maybe not in the 15 minutes.
Maybe you
Four-
should have
But
said
there was
that.
after because they
So
wanted
they
to
give you
challenge
8
me.
minutes to get back to them so that you can get back to them.
After I told them what I thought, that's why they were challenged. So the result I got from that 20 guys is 45-55. Yeah, split decision.
Yeah.
For some, there was clearly, hey, no doubts. US, if we look at no play. So there's something that we need to do to bring everybody to apply those criteria. And what is it playing the ball? How you define this? What is it exactly?
So I'll sort of get there, but this is what I'm saying, 1,000%, right? And so the other way to turn 1,000% is, it's obvious. And the 18,000 people in the stands can see it. It's obvious.
Yeah, but
So-
at some point it's not that clear. For example, on that type of play, when a player just throws his hand to the stomach of his opponent when it's moving, this is where you need to apply the criteria. Is he trying to attempt to play the ball or not?
Right.
If the answer is yes, then he has a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Practice.
C4 is interesting for me because it's simply a checkbox, right? And it's got nothing, so, thanks, Val.
Sorry to
Nice
interrupt.
to meet you in person.
I'm just gonna jump on a call, see you in probably about half an hour. Just
No,
to say
no
bye.
problem.
Thanks.
So,
luck.
but it's not with Clint Hamilton, is it?
No, I don't know who that is.
He's calling the CCAA right now.
I just want to say, I was typing ferociously there. I learned a lot about here, and actually I was texting with George on the side. I'm taking a lot of notes on things OCAA can do as well, because we want to be part of the officials development program as well. So I'm going to be connecting with Georgia, but this is really good. I'm really, really impressed with the conversation here. So thank you so much for having me, and I will see you in a bit when you're downstairs.
Good luck with your
Thanks,
meeting.
Thank you. So C1, C2, C3 are about the action. They're about the play. C4 has nothing to do with the action, only the criteria. So we need to have a player that is progressing towards the opponent's basket. Don't have to have the ball. Nothing to do with team control. Merely progressing towards the opponent's basket, illegal contact from the side or behind, and no other opponent between the player, ball, and the basket. And it's merely checklist. If we have those three, it's a C4. And it is amazing to me how often we have a C4 on the floor that's not called because the officials aren't in tune with that checklist.
Well, because they're watching the action,
Yeah, yeah.
right? They're not thinking criteria, so they're not checking,
Well,
it's a
and-
reframe, right?
And they probably don't know the criteria.
That's exactly it.
And it's tough.
That's the
when they
first
start
one.
getting shooting.
So
have to shoot, correct.
So this is where we talk criteria, and we make sure every time we have a U foul, when we talk to the officials, we talk in that language of the criteria and get them thinking that way. So we're not adding variables that have nothing to do with it. We don't need those layers. And you know, to give you an example, the men's world championships in 92 games, we only had 2 C4s. Because the players around the world have stopped, but we're dramatically behind in Canada because we haven't applied it consistently at all levels and don't have people understanding it. The other, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Just a couple of questions. Just C4. Issues that have been brought to my attention are lots of times offensive teams get deep and the foul actually occurs like early.
Still in the backcourt?
Yeah, still in the backcourt. We still consider that a C4 if there's no.
Location on the floor is not part of the criteria.
Okay. So,
That's the chicken shit.
Yeah.
But easy answer, right?
Yeah, that's all I need to
So
hear.
just-
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
point, a good point.
Right,
I had
because
the
we have that
The foul
evidence.
happened in the backcourt, so what?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. The next one is the progressing towards the basket. So tip, player goes to get it and it's tipped towards the sideline, so the player is going to get it towards the sideline and gets fouled from behind. So that's the other one. And are they progressing towards the basket? Or are they?
If it is at all forward, so closer to the basket.
Perfect.
It's there.
Okay.
So to add a small wrinkle to it, there is an interesting discussion about the no other opponent between the player, ball, and the basket. So if we're on the court and the action is over here and the defender's on the far sideline, if you're in the backcourt, they're in front.
Yeah.
Okay? But the closer you move to the basket, they have to have the ability to get in front of the player to play defense.
Right.
So if you're now down close to the basket and the turnover is there, if they're over here and this player has a straight line to the basket, they need to be truly in front to be in a position to play defense. It's not a soccer offside.
It's a chase down.
So it's the difference between like a straight line across and a funnel. And in fairness, we need to put some language in there that explains that.
Right.
But we're not aligned universally around the world as to actually how that fits.
Okay.
But realistically, we're not counting the players in front because it's a soccer offside situation 50 feet across the floor. They clearly need to be in a position to go and play defense.
Yeah.
On that. So the last thing on the U foul is we need to teach our officials to use a 0-1-2 protocol. And our 0-1-2 protocol is something happens, the 0 is I decide I need to make a call. The 1 is I stop the clock and post the foul. Now I process what happened, and if it meets the criteria, I have an unsportsmanlike foul. Where we have officials that are going straight here is where we have our errors because we purely have reaction and we're not making a decision. And, you know, now we're drifting into processing the play, start, develop, finish. But if we can drive that 0-1-2 protocol, we can get people to process those things. And even on the C4, it makes a big difference where they take the time to then process it. So we need to drive them to that 0-1-2 protocol.
Can you please comment on the 0-1-2 again, what each is? I'm writing that one down.
So the 0 is the decision, then I need to make a call.
That's the one I got now.
Okay, the 1 is I pause and I post
Okay.
the foul.
Nadine says take a breath.
100%, and that's where we're going. Now we take the breath, process what happened, and we have an unsportsmanlike foul. Much like the throw-in situation, if as a partner, a decision has been made, and you recognize the criteria for an unsportsmanlike foul is there, if you go in, you're going in to upgrade. So if you go in, you're going in to upgrade. Pierre, we need to upgrade that to an unsportsmanlike foul. We don't go in to have a discussion. Did you see if there was another defender? No, either you know or not. Because in life, if we go out to observe these games and we decide what we're going to look for today is officials that don't get to the baseline in 4 seconds. Well, we're going to find that 900 times a game because that's what we go looking for. So if you go in to have a discussion, you will come up with a result that is based on what it is you're talking about, not what actually happened. So we only go into upgrade if we're 100% sure. But if we go in, we're going into upgrade.
Talk me through C4, turnover, new trail to lead, we're trying to get into position, C is stagnant, but is looking up the court, and I hesitate to word thinks, right, sees and assesses, and then, right, what happens, they post their foul, and the reporting official needs time to process, but the secondary official that saw some of the contact, but maybe is thinking about it as well, talk me through that interaction. Because we've had a lot of those where the calling official, you can tell, has stopped and assessed, and then the secondary official, because they were not in position to deem that criteria, but you know, now both of them have locked eyes, right? And they know that they need to have a discussion. Talk me, maybe I'm not using the right words, am I using the wrong, like, you know, like,
how would they communicate?
how would they communicate that? Because that's something critical, because the partner coming in and saying, we need to upgrade, that's clear to me. A lot of the times that refereeing in the gray, a lot of our officials right now don't know how to have that conversation.
So that's why we've gone from 100% to 1,000.
And then it's Ontario, so we're at 3,000, right?
So I might move towards and say personal foul. End of the conversation. I've told you what I have.
Okay.
Or come in to say upgrade. But if we're going to stop, if we're going to have a conversation, we can't be successful trying to run a replay in our mind. So have you seen for you, have you seen, you might have it, I don't think I've got on this computer to tell you the truth. Have you seen the play out of the Tokyo Olympics, USA-France men's game, where Michael Whelan calls the unsportsmanlike foul?
No, he showed us the one with the referee.
Yeah, I have it, but it's on.
Yeah,
I have to plug it in.
Yeah, no, but we can always,
We can do that
we don't
tomorrow.
look at
We
it
can look
tomorrow.
at it tomorrow.
We can look at that play tomorrow. Because I think this is what we're trying to get, I'll let Nadine jump in, but this is what we're trying to get away from, is that discussion on the negotiation and have the officials recognize the criteria. And what you described to me is we have officials that don't have 1,000%. so it's a personal foul.
Very interesting, because that happened a lot.
Yeah.
When you have double whistle, instead of one whistle and one official going over to give information that we should agree, that's one thing. When we have a double whistle, both fists up, I will recommend that none of the two goes with this already. It's a situation where you get together, short discussion, and you came up with a decision. Because if you go like this and we have double whistle, and then one of the two goes with this, then we have two different decisions on the same plate, and then when you create problems.
The one official's only going there if they're 1,000% sure.
Yeah, I mean, but if you have both
That's
the
it.
fist hop, and then after 2 seconds, one of the two goes with this.
Then he's 100% sure, and he's owning the call.
I agree with you, but from the outside perspective, it's like you have two different calls here.
But is that not just reaffirm through practice, and the coach sees that our officials, or their officials, are definitive in their decisions, right?
No, I agree with you. If they both agree and they're clearly on the same page on they should be upgraded, then they get together and they come up with one call, not two different calls.
Yeah, but
If both stick with this, and none of the
But
two
they
goes
don't
with
have to
this.
be on the same page, because ideally, they've got different angles at it. Like ideally, they've got a different angle at it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So-
One of the two has the right call. It should be upgraded. I totally agree with you. But in that situation is we have two officials with only fist up on the call. And then after 2 seconds, one of the two comes with this. Then it's like we have a disagreement.
Yeah, you want to comment?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Perception.
Well, and I think that, something that we're trying to teach our officials is that when those things happen and crews come together, we have a protocol and a checklist as to how you resolve that.
Mhm.
And I think that unless you're paying your $500 or your $300 or
And
NLCP,
part of the protocol is don't do that.
Well, that's the first part, right? But there's also a communication checklist that they need to go through. And then there's also, for us as observers, there's also a process that we need to go through with them, right? And I'm just gonna add this with respect to, it's a 4-step process, right? When we're talking about an unsportsmanlike foul, because it's all about decision making, right? What went into your decision making with respect to that? So in that 4-step, they need to be able to tell us where was, what was the sort of initial decision? What was the point of contact? What was the criteria that they used? And what was their scaling base, 0 to 10? Because what Mike talked about, the 0 to 10, when you've got 2 posting, you gotta go through your head as that referee, am I at 10 or am I at 1,000? If I'm at 1,000, then I'm coming up with this. But they need to know that on unsportsmanlike foul calls, there's this scaling that is so important that they need to go through in their head before reacting.
And I think we're sliding a little bit away from the 1 to 10, because we want to be at 10, and trying to use the language of 100% or 1,000.
Yeah.
Because when we talked about it for 4 or 5 years, we were sort of saying if you're 9,
95,
five,
now it's
you're there,
Yeah.
but now we're at
100.
We're now at 100, so it still is scale,
Yeah.
So going back to that situation will be, and I think I'm buying it, we'll agree that one of the two is 100% sure you should come up and give that signal, and then we go with you guys.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they own it.
Then you debrief it after,
Yeah.
right? Talk to me about that. What did you see? Where was the point of contact?
And I think we'll get better consistency if we do that than where we are now, where we're probably calling a lot of unsportsmanlike fouls locally, at least C3s in the 70 range.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we get to that
You're going where you started with the protocol. If you're making that call, you're 100% sure when you make the call.
Yeah.
You're backing your decision with the correct terminology and criteria. You can justify it to your partner, you justify it to the coach, and move on. And
Yeah.
you do have this, and that's right.
And that's part of that
That's
communication checklist,
Yeah.
because you go through that. Right, and it's quick, but it's the same every time.
And it is the thing that actually the North Americans do better than anybody else in the world. Because the North Americans are generally much more comfortable having those conversations.
Really?
What's that?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, generally. Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I think what we need, just as a suggestion, we've all taken notes. If one of us could get a summary of what we talked about today.
I can
And
do that.
and then we.
Just
can-
photocopy it.
Yeah, okay, and then we'll, you know what, but we need to take that from
Take the
east to
IRS.
west, across the country, across Ontario, to make sure that we are all consistent.
Nadine, is there anything we didn't talk about there that you think we should talk about?
The only one is the travel, the sequencing of the travel.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have time?
We can do that tomorrow.
Yeah, we can do it tomorrow.
There's one thing I like.
We have time.
Have a discussion about is the picking a foul.
Okay, sure.
I think we need to talk about it. There's
Okay.
spur and sequence of that.
So,
There's, different protocol, or different criteria of what people use for faking a foul, and we need to get that straight, yeah,
so,
for sure.
so the FIBA IREF library app has a very good, I don't know, 4 pages, 5 pages
Yeah.
on the fake a file and the looking for the criteria. I will, I don't know, confidentiality is such an interesting thing, right? Because we need to keep things confident, but sometimes there's reasons to share things, but, please don't go further. We are looking at adjusting the rule so you can have both a foul and a fake. But right now, at least until next October, we're at a place that you can't have an official fake warning if you have a foul on a play. And we're looking at adjusting that, and the real reason we're looking at adjusting that is players who are fouled embellishing the fact that they've been fouled.
Yeah.
And in fact, many of our unsportsmanlike foul errors are the player embellishing the contact that occurs. So we are looking at.
But to build
Especially
on
on shooters to kick out,
Yeah, to build on your comment, I mean, if we have a discussion, if we came out an agreement on the protocol, the criteria to look at, because right now I think it's probably the part of the game that is problematic. There's so different approach for this. For example, there's some also when they call a warning on a block charge situation, no matter what's going to happen after, if there's a contact, it's going to be technical foul. Even if the offensive player just charged the defender, he had a warning before, they call it to you right away. And we need to fix that.
Well, but respectfully, that's wrong.
I know that's wrong.
So I don't know that it's our fake criteria that's the problem, as opposed to the official's decision making.
No, but how we train them, how we change the way they look at it, and why they have this approach, where it's coming from.
Well,
I don't know.
It's an interesting world, right? We've got a place in the world where we don't trust authority, generally. I mean, would you really want to be a cop today? It'd just be a miserable job. Like nobody trusts authority, and we have to get back to a place where if people are playing in the sandbox nicely with the other people, we shouldn't be judging them badly. We've got to stop assuming bad things about other people, and I think we have a lot of referees that are actually assuming bad things about players on the floor. And you know what? It makes it way easier to identify the bad actors when you realize that 95% of them are not bad actors.
Yeah.
For example, last year, the youth sport man, there was an issue in the tournament, big time. It was so different on consistency between the referee on how to apply this. It was a shame on something.
The different conversation here, but I think the one thing we can say is that we need to use the proper signal, which is a lower of the arm. And when we communicate, we need to communicate to the player and to the coach. And we don't communicate from 2 feet away. We communicate from 15, 20 with our voice. Because the warning is not so much for that player, it's really about that team. And if done properly, you prevent the other team from joining in the fray as well. Is there anything else that we want to talk about? Like things that are sort of on people's minds?
No, this is great. This is really good. It's gonna help us.
My wheels are spinning
Yeah,
in terms
mine
of what
too.
we're.
And we could spend time, we could
We're
spend,
Well,
we're gonna do
no.
this again tomorrow, but thank
so
you
we
for
could spend
today.
time more to talk about these two. I mean,
Extremely
Yeah.
taking a
informative.
foul for me, it's a must really to get.
I think
So,
faking a foul is a must tomorrow.
And taking on the same
Protecting the shooter.
area, protecting the landing space of the shooter.
So,
And
so
then
if we want to go a
travel.
little bit to the
And travel.
landing space of the shooter. So, when we talk about referee the defense, the landing space of the shooter thing is so critical on referee the defense. Because if we think about the way players are taught to close out,
Yeah.
when you close out, you're not trying to go through the person, you're actually trying to affect the shot, right? But if somebody is purposely taking away the landing space, you'll actually see they're not up here, their head is actually down because they're looking to where they need to get their feet to take that landing space away. So this is why it's critical to be able to referee that defender. And to answer the question, yes, you can have an unsportsmanlike foul on a player that purposely takes the landing space away. It's not a player that takes the landing space away, it's a player that does not make a legitimate defensive play, but actually goes to get themselves under that shooter's landing space.
So when you talk to Mike McKay, we reapproached the way we're teaching the women's side. I don't know what they're doing on the men's side, so I can't speak on it. With the chop steps and 1-2 stop, they're doing a hockey stop.
Yep.
And then if it's a 3-stride closeout, it's an automatic flyby,
Yeah.
right? Because they're like, we're not taking fouls on this
Yep.
because of it, right? And that's been kind of really effective way of doing it. And as a referees, if we're like picking that up early, we're like, hey, they're doing flybys. If it's a longer than 3-stride closeout. But it's an interesting one because you're right, when you land and look at gut. You don't land and look at shot.
Yeah.
Right? You're taught to do this, but you're looking here, right? In terms of it, and it's always a hand up and hand down, just because on the hockey stop, if they blow by you, like your first step has to, elongate kind of thing. So it's a good one. So faking a foul, landing, space shooter, and then
Secondary defense.
And travel.
You talk about travel?
Travel.
Was this time okay? Like enough time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Boy, I love to hear